Hi, welcome to the second part of the Anything Speech video. In this part, I'll be covering the speech-to-text module and how you can use it in your app or game. So let's get right into it. So if you open up our Anything Speech demo script, I've removed all of the previous statements that we're using for the text-to-speech section of this video. We've just got the start and the update function now. So the first function I want to show you in the speech-to-text system is the listen function. And this function allows us to listen to the microphone for a set period of time, and then it returns whatever said as in a text format. So if we have a look now at the anything speech.instance and then find our function, listen, it will give us what our input parameters are. So we have float time, and this is in seconds that the microphone will listen for, and then a delegate function. And so that delegate function, the AW speech done handler, will be called when the microphone has finished listening, so when the time has elapsed. And then any input that's been converted to text from that time will be passed into a string parameter in the delegate function. If that doesn't make sense, I'll demonstrate to you now what that means and how it works. So first of all, I need to define a function that I can pass in as a delegate. So if you go to private and define, I'm going to call it finished listening handler. I'm going to take in a string because that's what the delegate's defined as in the anything speech class. And I'm going to call this detected, make it easy to understand. Okay, and for this, all I'm going to do is just send debug log and then with our detected string in it. Save that. And then, so now what we want to do is pass in our parameters into our listen function. So I'm going to say listen for 5 seconds, and I'm going to put in just the name of the function that we want to be called when it's finished. That should work perfectly. So I'm going to have this not run all the time, because if we start listening every single frame, that's going to be called a lot. So I'm going to make a quick input function. So this is going to be called when the spacebar has been pressed down. So if input dot get key up, and then echo space. If the space key has been pressed, then we will start to listen for 5 seconds. The result we pass to the finished listening handler form of the detected string. So let's see how that works. Okay, so let's head back to the scene to test that now. So as you can see, we've got our listener with our script attached. And when we press play and press space, hopefully we should see the input from our speech-to-text system pop up here once it's finished listening. So that should be out after about 5 seconds. So let's press play. Okay, so now once we press space, after it's finished listening, it should pop up with our speech converted into text right here. So yeah, let's go. This is a test. And as you can see, after 5 seconds, the result of the speech-to-text diction been returned. That's all working perfectly. So this provides us the final translated text at the end of the listening period. But say you want to translate text from speech as you were speaking and display it on the screen. How would we do this? So if we go back into our script now, I can show you. So I'm going to comment out this string first, and then go to the anything speech.instance.listen. And then here you can see the second overload for the anything speech.listen function. So the second overload of the anything speech.listen function allows us to not only pass in a done callback handler, but also a process callback handler. The main difference is that the done callback handler is the one we used before, where it passes out the string that is decided on once the listening period has elapsed. However, the process callback handler actually passes all changes in text as it's being detected. So it's really useful for if you want to display text in real time. I think it's easier if I demonstrate it. So in order to use this listen, we need to pass in, first of all, the period of time to listen, which is the same as before. And then now we have our, if we go on to our second overload before we do that. So here we have our response callback. Now the response callback has the same format as the done callback, so it takes in a string. So in theory, we could use the finished listening handler to be our response callback. However, I'm going to write a new function just to make it very clear for us. So in process listening handler string is, I'm going to do it detected again. So I'm going to differentiate this from the first function by putting in a note for us, say that this text is in progress, and then print out the detected string. Okay, so now in our process callback, I'm going to pass in the in process listening handler. And for our done callback, I'm going to pass in the finished listening handler. So now that we've done that, let's save. So quickly before we test it, let's just review. It's going to listen for 5 seconds. All in progress text we pass back to the in process listening handler, where the in process text will be passed as a parameter, detected, as the detected string, and it will be printed out in the debug console. And then once the listening period has elapsed, the finished listening handler will be called, and the finished text string will be passed as the detected string parameter and then printed to the debug console. Let's have a look. Press play. Now let's activate it by pressing space. Testing, testing, testing. Now, as you can see, the in progress text is of some use, but I'm not sure how much use it will be. This is just something that you can access if you need it. It's definitely not as clear as the final message, which you can see here, but if you need to see this, then this is how you access it. So now that I've shown this part of the engine, I'm going to quickly just go over a little bit of the lower level functions that you can use and some of the architecture of the Anything Speech system. For most people, that's all the functionality you'll need out of the Anything Speech module. However, before we finish the video, there's a couple more things I want to cover. These are the start listening and stop listening functions, as well as how to adjust the timeout period for listening. So let's quickly go back into our script. So the start listening function and the stop listening function allow you to manually stop and start whether the Anything Speech listening agent is currently working. So it works like this. So if we go to our Anything Speech dot instance and then the start listening function, you'll see that it looks a bit like the listen function in that you provide the response callback and then the done callback. This is exactly the same as the last function that we looked at. So I can pass in the in process listening handler and then the finish listening handler into this function. So in essence, what this does is start the listening process. There's no end of the listening process here. However, there is an automatic timeout. You can access this timeout by going to the anything speech.instance.timeout value and set it manually if you'd like. The default value is 2 seconds, so I'll set it to 3 seconds. Now this means that the listening will stop listening after 3 seconds automatically. You can obviously set it for more if you want to, but I wouldn't recommend setting it too high because otherwise you might have issues. So let's quickly test it out there and then click. I'm going to quickly put a debug log in here just to show us when we've started listening. Right, let's save and test it out. So if we quickly test this, so if I press play and press space, testing, testing, testing. So you can see that it's returning the in progress and isn't timing out with a specific time, but it's waiting for the microphone to stop having input. So if we pause now for 3 seconds, it should show us the final input and then stop the recording. And there we are. It's not quite correct, but you can see how it works. And this is just on an input-based time. So if the microphone doesn't receive an updated value or any input for 3 seconds or however long you've set the timeout interval to be, then the microphone will stop detecting. So that's all for today. I've just given you a quick overview of the Anything Speech module, how to use text to speech, and how to use the speech to text to convert audio input into text. So join us next time when we've got our final video in the series on our runtime API, where we'll be exploring the Anything Chat functionality. Thanks very much. Bye!